in my heart, I knew that's who I had met. And from that experience, I began to, in my peripheral vision, have the sense of angels walking with me. And I didn't even know what an angel was, but I knew that's what they were. And I started having these direct knowings where I just knew, but I didn't know why I knew, but it had that energy of the garden. So it's just something that I learned to trust. And then when I was about 18 or 19, my early 20s, let's say, I began receiving direct messages from Ascended Masters and Archangels. And I put these guides through every test because I was having an experience I've always wanted to have with the universe, but I also wanted to make sure I wasn't just completely insane. And as I began having this direct communication with the Ascended Masters and Archangels, they began inspiring me to go and deliver messages to people, like in the grocery store. And if I didn't, I felt like my heart was going to explode. And so that was a little interesting, just going up to people in the produce aisle and, hey, you don't know me, but your grandmother wants me to say this to you. And people would have these very overwhelming experiences. And I didn't really know how I was doing what I was doing. I just knew how to do it. And it led to all these other synchronicities. And I was led to a bookstore to take a psychic development class. And in the third week, they asked me to teach it. And I laughed. I'm here to learn. I know what you're talking about. And then they said, can you do a reading? What's a reading? And I would just sit down and it would happen. And within a short amount of time, I began guiding the lives of many people who would come to me, and videos got put up on YouTube. And, you know, years later, after just serving humanity, I think my YouTube page has about 20 million views or something. And it's, for me, this is the fulfillment of my entire life's dream, where when most kids my age were dreaming of being the next Michael Jordan or being a police officer, I was dreaming of serving spirit.
And you're doing it.
Oh my God.
That's he's living his dream,
story.
actually.
When you're talking about meeting people
yeah.
and just using the guidance to say those things. I have a confession. Like when I was first awakening, I would fantasize about what it would be like to have that gift. And now, like, I'm hearing you actually did that. And I think the reason why I fantasized about that is when you know the other side is so real, the way that you can share details with someone else that no one else would know but the other side is a way of getting attention from spirit.
Did you have any funny experiences when that started happening?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I remember going to a grocery store and saying to someone like next to the oranges, like, hi, you don't know me. Before you run away, let me just say this. I'm being asked to say this by spirit. And if I don't, my heart's going to explode. So here we go. Blah, blah, blah. Here's a message from spirit.
I'd love to have been the fly on the wall there.
Me too. I know.
Yeah.
So what happened next?
And they just burst into tears. Oh my God. I was processing the loss of this relative. How did you know I needed to know that? And I said, well, I was just told to pass that on. I'm just the messenger.
That's beautiful.
And, you know, there's so many experiences I've had in my life of things like this, of, you know, sitting in front of someone at an event and this energy of light comes through me and pulsates into the presence of someone who was at stage 4 cancer. And they happened to go to the doctor the next day, and it went from like 80% cancer to like 20% cancer. And what's interesting is that when I was a kid, I looked up at the sky one day and I said, I want to know the glory of divine will. And I want to have a front row seat and see the miracles of the divine throughout my life. And humbly, I get to do that. I get to sit front row. I get to be the space in which this comes through, which I know, Lee, you know all about that. And I get to then walk away just as flipped out as what came through me, because I'm such a fan of this field and I'm such a student of this work. And for me, the work that I do with my audience, our audience, because it's really our world together, is I love this work. I love discovery. I love magic, and I love being able to be a space to show people that magic is real. The other side is reality. Me talking to my parents who are both on the other side and talking to them about the book that, you know, I wrote that's coming out next year. That's not a fantasy. That's my everyday life. And when I was a kid, I would be mesmerized by magicians. And in my heart, I didn't want to know how the trick worked because I knew magic was real. And so for me, this is a way for me to help not only just heal others and awaken their heart to love and unity, but to really help remind people that magic is real because it's what we are.
How beautiful. What was one of the tests that you would put your guides through?
I would ask the same questions over and over again to see what the answer was. I was trained very early by my guides as I was putting through the test, and they said, look, it's not about who we say we are. It's about the quality of the content of what we say. And you will never hear us say anything that is out of alignment with what we're here to share with you. So I would ask the same questions over and over again. And it didn't matter and I would also do this thing where every guide had to have a specific color, picture, that every time I talked to them, it had to be the same. And if they wanted to introduce me to a new guide, it had to come through someone I already knew. And it was this very specific thing I did because I just wanted to make sure, because if I'm gonna do this work and I'm gonna work with people's most sensitive areas, I want to know that what I'm doing is compelling and is reliable, because I take very seriously people's trust and people's traumas that we're all healing. So I would ask the same questions over and over again. They would say things and I would go, why is that? And just to see, would the personality change? Would they get frustrated? Would the content ever change? And in the 15, 20 years I've been working with the Ascended Masters and Archangels all day, nothing's ever changed. And what was amazing for me was the greatest thing I've learned from working with these beings is how they treated me with respect and love in their presence. And my mission was always, I transmit the consciousness, I transmit the teachings, but to treat every person the way the masters treat me, because that's what they're really teaching me.
Beautiful.
At what point, Matt, did you believe that what you had was accurate enough so that you could do what you do? In other words, do you not doubt it anymore and say, okay, I've got it, or let's say I don't have it, but I believe it's true and real and I can be used? Right.
Funny answer is 10 years into my career. But the thing is that, it was after 10 years of doing this work that I finally was able to not have those lingering doubts. But what got me into the work before I could resolve my doubts, because you have to resolve some of your doubts as you go through into the field to do the work, was that I would just see and feel that people were just suffering so incredibly, and people were suffering far worse than I've ever suffered. And so there was this original game that I played with myself that I said, I'm going to get so clear that I can feel confident coming out with my message. And then what interrupted that was the recognition that people are just suffering too deeply, that it can't be about this perfect way of doing it. I got to get out there, and my intention is to help. My intention is to serve. And I would ask Spirit every day, let me be exactly what people need for the healing that they deserve and desire. And as I was in the field doing the work, I was being trained. And as a channel, I teach things I've never heard before. I can say things I've never said before. And then I'm outside of myself actually studying what I'm doing and saying. And over 15 years of doing, one-on-one sessions with people, I would listen to the dialogues. I don't really read books. So I would listen to what people would say about other paths. I would hear what I would say in response. And that's how I educated myself, was actually listening to what came through me. And so it was a very interesting process. But what really got me over myself, to be honest, was how deeply people hurt and how deeply I desire to be that space of healing for the people who hurt, including myself.
I want to ask something that's germane to this program. We have a Q&A section. I'll make this fast. And before you came on, one of the questions was from Greece, is how do I get out of the tension, worry, fear, and all that's happening in my country? And it almost makes me nauseous to think about it, and I feel fine as long as I'm meditating, but then it all returns. What would you say?
I would say that one of the fundamental shifts that is imperative to really realize is that what our experience is, and this might be a little bit different from an old paradigm belief, right? An old paradigm belief might say, the way I'm feeling is based on my perception of reality. And there are times where that's absolutely true. But I would say that in this new paradigm, what we're finding is that it's not, or what I would call I am in pain, I am in fear, I am in terror, is actually the fear and terror that I am personally healing for the collective. Mm-hmm. So I am what I identify with and call my own stuff. And then we apply spirituality and say, how can I get myself out of my stuff? And so I can then be in greater access with my better stuff, which is kind of an interesting play of the spiritual ego. Instead, we say, I accept that the terror and fear that I feel is what my energy field is processing and releasing for the collective. And then we start to experience space from that terror and fear so we can process it and release it through our fields versus identify with it and then look for ways to maneuver around or beyond it.
That's a much better answer than I gave.
I think I would like to say it's a complimentary answer.
Yeah,
don't discount what you gave. That was beautiful what you gave.
Yes.
I love hearing the other perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it's so amazing. It's spirit is like Woodstock, and we're all these different bands. We're all singing the same themes, but we all have different melodies. We all have different words and lyrics and different journeys we take people on. But, I'm of the opinion that every bit of truth, every expression is just a piece of this. And because of how our brains are wired and we have subconscious programming and associations of certain words and phrases, we all need to hear it all different ways in order for it to click. And so I love being able to be on this show together and just share and connect, because truly together we are all helping all of us really wake up together as one. So.
Absolutely. We certainly feel that there is new energy on the planet and that we are entering a new cycle. And I'm just curious as to how that has played into your work and whether you feel a sense of a new cycle beginning.
Oh, absolutely. I think what's interesting is when we think about the spiritual path and the wisdom that is being offered, there are different dimensional perspectives. There is wisdom in the third dimension and the fourth and the fifth and so forth. And so I think what's really interesting is in this new paradigm, I think that what we're finding, or as the new cycle, as you would say, I think what we're finding is that we're redefining the teachings from a space of oneness, so that any sense of division or separation with ourselves isn't being attempted to be resolved by more spiritual division or separation. And I really think that for me, what really struck a chord is, when I had my experience as an 8-year-old, and I've had all these awakenings throughout my life that have been cataclysmic level, holy you-know-what awakenings, where it literally feels like everything of my past exploded and oozed out my ears. And from this perspective, I realized that, love is the highest vibration and the highest truth. And so it became my mission that if there was a teaching to offer to resolve anything, it had to come from the highest place of love. So if we're going to unravel these things called egos, how do we actually do that in a loving way without throwing in a trash can or trying to abandon it? As I often say, if it wouldn't be the way you speak to a child, it might not be the way you would treat yourself. Mm-hmm. So it became my mission to kind of redefine everything through the eyes of love, because if we are becoming more enlightened love beings, then love should be the path that gets us there.
If I can just say so, people tuning into you for the first time on YouTube, I can totally understand what's going on because of the awakening on this planet. They're seeing purity, they're seeing love, they're seeing wisdom and a delivery that you give that is all of those. And that is unusual for today, my friend.
Thank you.
And so I see this very, very clearly in you, and it just enhances everything we've been taught is coming. So what's next in general?
What's next? My God, what is next? Well, there's a 3-word phrase I was taught recently, because I was talking to the universe about what's happening in the planet. Because, it's so easy right now to look at the world and go, everything's going insane. Everything's going crazy. And the 3-word phrase that I always work with the universe on is absorption foreshadows transcendence. And so on an individual and collective level, first we have to be absorbed in a certain condition, to build up pressure like a slingshot or like a volcanic eruption, to then create this transcendent force that takes us beyond the identification of something. So in order for us as a planet to really transcend systemic racism, we've had to go through a period of being fully absorbed in it in a more conscious way, which we experienced over the last year. In order for the divine feminine to come back into equal prominence, we've had to be absorbed in all the ways the feminine is and has been repressed. In order for us to transcend fear, we've had to be absorbed in it. In order for us to transcend division, we've had to be absorbed in it, which has been the majority of what we've experienced during this last year and a half or so forth. So I think what's really interesting is what's next. Right now, we've been experiencing a lot of absorption, and it's making people tired, disillusioned, and it is truly a process that is important to transmutation, but it tends to break down the, energy and vitality of so many energetically sensitive beings. But to answer your question, where we're going next is we're moving through absorption and we're entering into transcendence. Mm-hmm. And I think what it's going to teach people is that it's not just doing your spiritual work and I do my work to then transcend, but that there's also this period of we have to actually be absorbed in something long enough to steep and build up the energy that then gives rise to the acceleration of transcendence. So it's really a balance of co-creation.
I think that's beautiful. What I would love to do now is to have you share one of your channeled processes where you help clear layers of emotional density. It could be this lifetime or a lifetime before, but I think it's a good segue that you just gave that answer to then move into experiencing that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I call this process the subtraction method. I was taught it many years ago. And it would start with any time we are feeling any kind of dysregulation in our nervous system, any kind of upsetness. And what we want to first do is we want to locate where the feeling is. It could be your mind, it could be your heart, it could be your stomach. It could be any chakra. It could be an organ or a limb. And then we would ask ourselves to, once we've located it, to label it, what is an adjective I could use to describe this sensation? And we have to know that everything that comes to us is always right. And so let's say we find it in our heart. And we say, this feels like anxiety. And then what we do is we feel the anxiety, and we just then feel underneath the anxiety, knowing that everything is always right. And maybe under the anxiety, we feel uncertainty or whatever word comes up. And we feel it for a moment. And then we go underneath that and we say, and what's underneath that? And perhaps that could be upsetness or sabotage or disillusionment. And we keep going through this process very slowly, breathing and just taking our time. The pivotal point, and most people think they're wrong when they get to this point, is they'll get to a point where the answer is, I don't know. And it's actually the right answer, because I don't know is the moment the ego gives up control of the process. And then we say, what's underneath I don't know? And 1 to 2 or 3 layers under I don't know is actually light, love, joy, and oneness. And each layer that we've gone through is a different layer of incarnation, a different emotional imprinting. And it allows us to clear the layers of emotional density, but in a way where we're befriending our feelings instead of having an oppositional relationship with it. Again, as always, to clear, to transmute, but always in the name of love.
Beautiful. So where can people go to experience workshops with you, sessions with you, more information with you?
Well, for a listing of upcoming events, to be a part of my free newsletter, I send out every Sunday. My website is mattcon.org. That's www.mattcon.org. I also have free videos on YouTube, many of them. And it's just, a true honor to serve at this time and to be a part of this incredible awakening where, even though it looks like life can look like it's being flipped upside down, it is an even more fertile opportunity and invitation to be a part of the most extraordinary shift that we and all of our ancestors and other avatars have been prophesizing and preparing for. And so it's quite an honor to be here and to serve everyone.
You have a
Amazing.
regular YouTube broadcast where you talk?
I post videos. I'm going to probably get back to starting to post videos every other month, but I have a monthly, 2 calls a month I do called Total Integration. And once a month I do a thing called Project Resolution, which is a free global meditation where every month it's a theme of taking something in the world in headlines and using our light to add positive change to what we're seeing in the world.
Beautiful. What's going to be the name of your book that you're working on, that you're planning?
My next book is called Holding Space. And this is my 4th book. And it is, I believe the subtitle is How to Be with Ourselves, Connect with Others, and Face a World of Uncertainty. And it is really about how do I embody love and express compassion when I'm interacting with people of different belief systems.
Yes.
How do I hold the space of love so I'm not just,
Yes.
like you said earlier, in meditation, one with spirit?